Okay, welcome everybody to another edition of the North Point Overtime podcast. This is kind of a fun special edition for those of you who are watching online as opposed to listening to this today, because this is a Zoom edition as we're sitting here with Julie and Jen. And I want to introduce who they are in a second here. We are following up a brand new series from this past Sunday that is called Navigating the Season. Well timed for all that is coming with Thanksgiving a few days away now and Christmas shortly after that. And what we kind of dove into was we are hoping probably as much as any year ever for a great holiday season. Feels like we really need that. But while every single season also has some challenges, has some potential for things to go sideways, some chaos to erupt, this year feels like a special edition of that when you throw in all of the controversial topics that could come up around the Thanksgiving table or the Christmas table, etc., and cause some noise. And so we dove into that, and we just said, when you think about navigating the season, our destination we'd really like to arrive at is peace. So if you plug in peace into your Apple Maps or Google Maps, how is it that we get there? And we went specifically through a roadmap that Paul gives us in Romans 12. And in that roadmap, he says, if it is possible, meaning it may not always be possible, but if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, placing the ownership on us, live at peace with everyone. And the kind of starting foundation piece of that. So, if you are, again, going back to Google Maps or Apple, it always is going to ask, are you starting from home? Are you starting from, current location? We said the starting point of that is verse 9, where he says, really love everyone. Don't just pretend to love, but really love everyone. And then the rest of the roadmap is an application of that. So the kind of big idea, the podcast, not to go on too long with it, or the big idea for this podcast, the big idea for the Bottom Line Sunday, was that there's benefit in the pursuit of peace, even without the promise of peace. Even if somebody's not going to change, even if they're going to stay in their habits and cycles, there's benefit in the pursuit of it, because you'll learn things about you, you'll learn things about your Heavenly Father, and then there's hurts and pains that will stop coming out on the people around you. And at the end of the day, you can have peace about a relationship, even if you don't have peace in the relationship. So today what we want to do is we want to get really practical into how we actually navigate a lot of those relationships, a lot of that conflict, what it is that we can actually do about it based on our different family dynamics. And so Julie is joining us again for the podcast. She has been on multiple times with us before as our executive assistant here at North Point and basically makes everything run behind the scenes. That's kind of your job description, Julie, right? Just kind of everything.
Yes, director of everything.
Yes.
All the things.
Makes us look like we know what we're doing most of the time, so that's great. And then we have, I guess for the first time, Jen Mazzola is here with us, who I am excited because one of my roles here at North Point is to lead Inside Out, our high school environment, and we have coerced her into that environment to lead there, which we're so excited about. No small commitment there. But you have a very extensive resume here, Jen, that I'd love if you just introduced a little bit of who you are. We wanted to call you an Enneagram coach, but you pushed back on that a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
People through a journey. And so, but yeah, I know that you have been a pastor for over 20 years now, and not too long ago relocated to Austin with a fam. So you just want to update people on who you are. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and you kind of just said it. I've been in ministry for almost 20 years and ordained for about 12 of that, out in Nashville, Tennessee, which is actually where I am now. So I love what you were just sharing, because as I'm visiting with my family this week, it's a great reminder for me, and the constant changing landscape that is COVID as we're out here. So did that out here. And then my husband got a job opportunity in Austin about 2 years ago. And when we moved, the deal was, for the first time ever, my kids got to choose when we went to church, because it wasn't where mom was working. They could go wherever they want. And they fell in love with North Point and Inside Out and Transit at that point, because I had a middle schooler when we first moved. And so we landed at North Point, and then I met Julie, and my life changed, and everything has been wonderful ever since. Mainly because
that's what everyone says, right?
Right? I know that's what Chris thinks. So yeah, no, it's really that simple. I've been a pastor for a very long time. And so now I still do a little bit of that, do some spiritual direction. And part of that is Enneagram conversations for sure, because it's one of my favorite tools to look at how God is working in our lives.
Well, we are really grateful to have you today and just to pick your brain for a while. And those are two great cities, by the way, Nashville and Austin.
Right?
Like, you could have it much worse than that. So Yeah.
I appreciate that, Jordan. I have a coworker in Austin that's always battling me for which is the better city. And I appreciate they're both
Yeah.
very wonderful. They're like twins in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. We were chatting ahead of time before we started recording. Emily and I, my wife, Emily and I just vacationed there a couple years ago and really loved it. That was our first time in Nashville, but one of our favorite spots we've been to. So that is great. That is great.
Great town.
Well, today, specifically, we're going to spend a good chunk of time on the Enneagram itself. If you're not familiar with it, we'll get to what that is in a little bit, a type of personality typing tool. But before we start with that, I'd love to just set up a little bit further why the holidays tend to be so complicated when it comes to the relationships that are most important to us, why there seem to be lots of opportunities for chaos around them. And so, Jen, I was just wondering if you'd add any context to that to kind of set up before we get to the Enneagram of why these are so difficult to navigate.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the Enneagram, which is like exactly what you said, Jordan, it's a tool. So if it's the tool that's, you've kind of got this lens, this is how you see the world, you're still a part of a bigger system. And so I think if we're going to start talking about what it looks like to go and be with our families for the holidays or to navigate the holidays, let's start with the big picture and then maybe zero in on our specific personality. And you and I were talking earlier just about just the dynamic. And I want to start with the idea that, because when I came back to Nashville, I've been here for about 2 weeks now. And when we got back into town, I started having conversations, and just the theme I kept hearing over and over is, I'm tired. I'm tired. And I think so, regardless of if you're going to get to be with your family this Thanksgiving and this Christmas, or if for various reasons that's just not going to work out with restrictions or just health concerns, I think it's good to start with that we're tired and that we've been balancing, we've been pivoting. I've kind of grown to hate that word, but everything has been changing and shifting. Since I've even gotten to town, my family's Thanksgiving plans have changed now 3 times. Wow. Now we're just going to order food from Cracker Barrel. That's where we are because we're tired. And if you think about having to balance and not being able to lean in one direction or another, because we can't go this way and then we had to go that way, and if you were trying to do that in terms of an exercise, right, your core would be sore because you'd be like, oh, I'm just trying to balance and maintain this. And I think we're in the same place, and we're all living beings that thrive off energy. We have to have energy to function, and we don't have any energy because it takes a lot of energy to have conversations about, okay, so what's the new restriction? Okay, so, when do I have to quarantine? Okay, so how do I feel about this? Well, this family member is very scared. Well, this family member is not scared at all, and almost throws that in. There's so many things. And then you add all the other layers, politics. And that seems to be, so one of the things you and I were talking about is that the holidays are amplifiers. Everything is bigger. And that means good stuff is bigger, like lights are brighter and your house feels cozier and watching a Christmas movie. These are all great things. It's oh, and it's so wonderful. But that means also if there's an empty chair at the table, that's heavier. Where my husband's family we just lost my mother-in-law. So this will be our first Christmas without her. That will be heavier. Dysfunction in our family. Even if we put on our smiling faces for that one meal, it's almost amplified still, the tension and the drama and all the stuff that swirls around the system that we've grown up with. It just gets amplified. And I think that we need to give ourselves a lot of grace if we're in this amplified, tired season. You are going to be tired and amplified, but that also means Uncle Joe, he's tired too. And even though you didn't vote like Uncle Joe, he's tired, and your mother-in-law that's driving you crazy, or your father-in-law, or your sister-in-law, or whatever the dynamic is, we've all got that kind of pocket in our lives. They're tired too. So we're all tired. And if we're trying to go, like you said in Romans, if we're trying to go as far as it depends on me, we have to realize, okay, first, I'm tired, they're tired. Let's all get lots of grace because everything feels bigger. And then when you get past that, once we get past the big obvious stuff, hey, COVID, politics, God, I feel like we've been through so much, right? Racial tension, so many things have been swirling around our community and our country. So put that on your family, and then put in the fact that your family has an autopilot that it doesn't even realize it's doing. I always explain it to people our family has a dance. So we automatically do this dance, whether we realize it or even enjoy the dance. That dance sometimes has family secrets, has roles, maybe you're the black sheep. It has scripts oh, in our family, we don't say, and then fill in the blank. Or in our family, this is how this goes. The Bjorkmans always do this. right? Like we always have like these rules and these scripts and these things that we've just gotten used to. In fact, I think when we get married, we spend our first half of our marriage going, oh, your roles and scripts and family dance is different than mine. we try and figure those out. So we're doing this dance, we're doing this thing. And if you're like, this year, I want it to be different. This year, I want to bring peace. I love that. Just the idea of like, we're going to pursue peace. Even if we don't land there, we're going to have done our part. We're going to go as far as it depends on us to be a person of peace in the midst of what, for some of us, is a really hectic, dramatic family dynamic. So when you do that, though, the system has an auto set. So the way I always describe it is like, if you stand here and this person, and I always pick on Uncle Joe. I don't actually have an Uncle Joe, so if someone does, I hope it's not actually offensive. But so, it seems like a good name for a target. So I got Uncle Joe and I got me, and we've always been at odds. It could be, again, a more intimate relationship than Uncle Joe, and I take a step toward health, and they don't know what to do because even subconsciously they don't understand what to do. So they reset. They're like, no, this was the step. This is the distance for our dance. And so I take a step again toward health. No. And so they'll push back at you because they're trying to get you back here. And that's why we end up in these games with our family, like the same conversations we have over and over and over. So we've got the big obvious stuff, politics, COVID, 50 million other things swirling around us. Then we've got these scripts and these roles and this dance that we do with our family on autopilot. And then we've got our own stuff. I actually remember one of the first services that at North Point that we attended, Buck talked about emotional gaps. How if you ever wonder why you feel like you're 16 when you go home, and you're like, my parents just still look at me like that bratty 16-year-old. And it's like, well, for me, I realized, I actually become a bratty 16-year-old when I go home because I enter that environment and then I just revert. I just go back to like things I didn't even know that I was doing. So there's all these layers to this amplified, tired season. And so when we're trying to, I think the goal, a lot of times we think the goal is to either figure out how to fix our family or get out of it.
Yep.
Right. Like, it's like, I either need to be all you guys are crazy and we need to figure it out, or I'm out because I can't do that. And I think that if we could learn to, I love how God does that with us. God's like, no, I'm in this game. Now I've got some ideas on how we can make this game better, but I'm in it. And so I think that's the goal with our family, and to live at peace with them in a way that maintains health and we remain us while we're also a part of that system. Because I remember being in school and when we were studying family counseling, I thought, well, just make a wall, like have a boundary. Like if they're dysfunctional, see ya. But as of course, we're talking about this in like counseling classes, and I'm thinking like, they're like, well, no, the goal should be to remain an I in the midst of a we, like we are the Mazzolas or we are the Jones or whatever, we are our family, but I'm also me. And as I heard that through the lens of psychology, I'm like, oh, that's grace. That's grace. Like, that's just like a big curtain of grace saying, hey, I'm here and I'm working on me and I'm trying to bring peace and I'm going to keep doing that, even though it does make me tired, even though it does require a lot of me sometimes, but I'm also not going to just be done with you entirely. And again, that's a different conversation when we're talking about unsafe things. That's a totally different dynamic when we're saying someone might not be safe to be around. But I know for me, my personality lends itself to all or nothing with friendships and with family. It's just easier. And God has challenged me to be like, let's don't do that. Let's do in and out with me. And it looks very different when you go as far as it depends on me with him versus in your own power and ability.
Wow.
I feel like I just blabbed a lot. Sorry. I just threw all that out there.
No, there's so much in I was just paying attention and like listening, forgetting I'm supposed to ask questions along the way, which is great.
Well, that's what I was
just
waiting for, Jordan.
You go.
I was waiting for the questions. You could tell, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the, the applications that takeaways that we talked about this week was how you have to clarify your expectations as you're thinking about like, what is the win of these relationships? How much progress can I actually expect? We mentioned the proverb that says hope deferred makes the heart grow sick, meaning like if I get excited every single time, this is the year, everything's going to change. It's all going to be great. I've done some steps and worked on some health, or I did one nice thing or whatever. And then we get disappointed because our family is like exactly who we knew them to be. And so I feel like laid out a lot of expectations to, you talk about like having grace for yourself to know, okay, we're marketed to like, we're supposed to be the best versions of ourselves in the holidays, but none of us ever are. We're tired. It's been a long year on top of it, and so to come in like, I'm going to be tired and I've got my stuff, they're going to be tired and they've got their stuff. If I have that expectation alone going in, I feel like that's going to be a game changer, what you just talked about.
Yeah, and I love what you were saying with those expectations. So the way I look at it, it's this Romans 12 thing that you keep bringing us back to. So if the verse is, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So, and we were talking earlier about how I love that God's like, okay, so it won't always be possible. But I really do look at it as a measuring tape. And that will make more sense if you ever learn my Enneagram number, because I would really love a formula and a rule on how to deal with every relationship and dynamic. And I think that if I had that formula or rule, I would do it. I'm ready. And it just doesn't work that way. But when you were just talking, I was thinking about this concept of a measuring tape with, whether it's with Uncle Joe or an in-law or even just a close family friend. It could be any relationship, right? Like if I within myself am saying, hey, my expectation is we're going to go 3 feet. We're going to get 3 feet closer this year. And then 3 feet, like I'm setting the mark. I am probably going to end up disappointed, or I'm going to feel like, well, I only got 2.5 feet, so then I failed. But I think that something we have to do is say that expectation can change. So like this year, maybe I'm just going to, my goal is to love Uncle Joe just a little better this year. Is to be patient. Is to listen to his stories one more time. Is to receive the fact that we politically disagree so passionately, but I'm going to listen. And I'm going to be willing to learn from someone who stands in a different position with me. But that's going to be my measurement. And I'm not going to try and fix the deal with my sister-in-law and the deal with the way my husband interacts and the deal with the way the cousins are at each other. I'm just going to measure this far. And I think but the only way we do that each season is to walk in concert with the Holy Spirit, right? So this idea that I'm not going to set my pace. I'm going to allow God to tell me, hey, this is where I want you to be this year and this time with your family. And then I'm just going to release. I'm just going to, okay, this is where we are. But then that may not be the same for next year. So if you've got these mantras in your head, like, well, every year, and, and I don't even know why I do this. I show up every year and it's the same. It's like, one, you're only accountable for you. You're only going as far as, it's as far as depends on you, not as far as depends on you and them. It's literally just you. How far can you go? And I realize they may not go and meet you halfway. But if we can just measure that out each time and release just the rhythm that we that we mandate ourselves to have. Does that make sense? Like that, 100%. Just take Thanksgiving. Don't worry about the rest of the holidays yet. Let's just take Thanksgiving. Yeah. Let's get through Thanksgiving and then take a step back but do that in conversation with God. And I know that, and everybody is different in where that is. And, our church that I used to work for here in Nashville, we were a church where not everybody even was sure they bought into what we were talking about. We were talking about scripture. We're talking about what we have as a belief system. And that's okay, because you can still apply the stuff that, for me, the beauty about this truth is I'm okay if you aren't necessarily on the same page with me. I promise this, that just even taking a step back and just clearing the space to give the opportunity for that voice, that small voice, just to speak over where you need to be with your family just this week, will pay off dividends. That's what you were talking about when you were sharing about what you shared Sunday, is just the pursuit of peace. Yeah. We're going to reap the rewards of that for sure.
Yeah. There's benefit in it regardless, especially regardless of how the other side responds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that, talking about, you said you wish you had a formula for the individual relationships, and that would be really great. To some extent, not perfectly, but to some extent, the tool that is the Enneagram speaks into that a little bit. And but we were talking, beforehand about what the Enneagram has meant to us. I feel similar for me in terms of my relationships of, night and day, having just this lens to view, the most important, relationships in my life. And this is a game changer for friendships. It's been family, at work, understanding that so many times you use that script language of like, how me and somebody on the other side of we're using completely different scripts. Like we're not even speaking the same language because I'm totally missing their core fear, their core desire, or what it is that they're, trying to say with their actions and words. And so I'd love to, shift to that a little bit because I think it's going to be really freeing for people as they go through to hear some of this lens. But I know that, plenty of people listening are not even going to be familiar with what the Enneagram is entirely.
Okay.
Lots of people at this point maybe have heard about it, at least loosely, if you have any form of social media or anything like that. But
I was about to say, I feel like Austin and Nashville are like hot spots for Enneagram conversations.
Sure.
Let's, so if you have no basis of the Enneagram, like this is, what in the world are you talking about? So we're talking about a personality tool. I promise you've taken a million, even if all you've taken is those BuzzFeed quizzes that are like, what is your Disney princess, or which Harry Potter house do you belong in? What kind of
pizza are you? Yeah, that's
right.
Great. Yeah.
And I love those too. I'm not sure. I mean, I love them. I think they're all great. And I'm just a sucker for all those. So that could be that saying that the Enneagram is not an end all be all to anything. I think the more that we learn about ourselves, Psalm 139 says, for I knit you together in your mother's womb, and I formed you and I fashioned you, and your works are wonderful, Lord. And I know that full well. Well, I think the Enneagram gives you the opportunity to know that full well, like to know yourself better. And the more you know yourself, someone told me once, well, don't put me in a box. If you give me a number, you're putting me in a box. And I'm like, well, you're in a box. Let's you're already in it. So, but don't you want to kind of know it? Like you're already viewing the world through these lenses. And this just gives you the opportunity to, for a moment, put on, other lenses to see, and I agree with you. It was a game changer for me in my workplace, for sure. In my marriage, we've been married for about 20 years and yes, we have been married for 20 years. I didn't know how long I've been married. And I would say the first half, I was interpreting what my husband was trying to achieve to make himself feel and our family feel safe. I was interpreting it as like just kind of cramping down on me, and we weren't even all he was doing was trying to be a provider and provide the safe space for us. And all I was feeling was something else because we're different people. Yeah. And I think about wasted arguments. So anyway, there's these 9 lenses through which you can view the world, and think of them more as caricatures. Like when you go to a theme park and you get that person that draws and your head is gigantic, we're going to kind of blow them up and almost make fun of them because it's really the only way to get to them. Right. So, and someone once told me like the best way to know which number you are is which one offends you the most. So just be listening for that. If we highly offend you, you might be that, but because there's this idea that like, when we really have someone call us out and someone reads our mail, we're like, oh, okay. And we don't necessarily want them to talk to us anymore. And the Enneagram does that. It's like, oh, this is why you do what you do. And you're like, well, I don't want everybody to know that. So if we're looking at them.
The author, I think of The Road Back to You, I think it's Ian Cron, I think is his name. I've heard him describe it as like 9 normals, what you're saying, like these lenses. We all have a way that we see the world that we think is normal because it's the only way we've ever seen the world. And to have a recognition that like one is not better than the other, some people think certain types are more desired. A healthy of any number is an incredible type and with so much to bring to the world. But there are 9, at least 9 normals, ways to view the world. And so I like that lenses or the normals language is really helpful.
Yeah, it is. It's one of my favorite authors that writes about the Enneagram is Richard Rohr, and when he spends a lot of time talking about this is actually that thing that's been getting at you for a while, but you've never understood it's getting at you. And it's your autopilot, it's your auto manager, and it will run you if you don't pay attention. It's also how you're uniquely and fearfully, wonderfully made. And so you're, the very thing that is your blessing and your gift to the world is often has another side, right? That is also why you have some difficulty from time to time. So, we can start with my number because, and they pick numbers because when we do names, which they've all kind of come up with their own names too. There's about 1 million names for each number, but the idea is to get it out of your head with the names and just look at the number. And it's not a hierarchy of numbers. It would be easy to think that 9, the top is the best, or 1 is the first number. It's not like that at all. The numbers are actually meant to get you out of that. So if you start with a 1, which is my number, I'm a 1, and these are the people that are going to show up at your holidays. Well, so let's try and do this. We're going to see if we can do this. Let's really quickly look at them, maybe through how they might host Thanksgiving and how they might show up. And so as a guest and as a host. So a 1 as a host, everything's going to be prepared, and they're going to start on time. They're going to be a little confused when you don't, because that feels a little rude to them, because they're very ordered. You would say I know some people label that number as the perfectionist, but it's not necessarily perfection as in like OCD, where when you come in, they're going to be setting the table perfectly. It might be that could be for some people, but it's more for like morality, like this idea that there is a right way to do things, but the problem for the 1 is like it's their right way. And we can be easily caught up in the fact that it's like it's my right, and we have to kind of learn to get out of that. So if you're a 1 host, if that's your personality, you need to be able to allow people to come in and allow them to be late. So you can still start on time. Their lateness doesn't mean you can't do your right thing, but without this punishment and this judgment that often comes from a 1, like allow people to have not brought the right dish, or to have forgotten the dish altogether, and just work on yourself to say, okay, I'm going to go as far as I can. I'm going to set the table and have the house ready as far as I can. And then I'm going to release the rest to the Lord. I'm just like, the rest is going to go to him, and he can deal with everybody else. Now, if you're a 1 that's attending, if you have a 1 family member, these might be the people that come in and like, they notice the dust on your shelf, like, and they might point it out, not because they think that you're dirty. It's not that at all. It's they can't help but see it. Like, they didn't mean to see it. They really don't even want to see it, but man, they just see it every time. So if you have a 1 that's a guest, then don't be offended by any of what can come across as like this critic and this judgment, because know this about a 1 for me is, and obviously it's my number, so it's easy for me to think about this, is like our inner critic is way worse than anything we project out to the world. Like, we are being more irritated with ourselves than we ever are of you. So if you've got that family member that seems like to always have a critique, most likely inside it's even way worse. And what could you do if you're hosting a 1 to let them know, like, you don't have to be perfect to be in our family? Like, that would be a moment of grace, right? Like, it'd be a moment of peace. It'd be like, hey, I want to give you this. That's a gift. And listen, I'm like getting teary, because that's what I want people to give me. I'm like, Julie, when I come over, I need you to make sure that I know that I can enter that space, and you'd be surprised. Like, once, and again, if you don't know your number, you might not even realize people could do this with you. But if someone creates a space for you, and you're one of the numbers that tends to be a little more critical, and they give you a space that is judgment free, it's confusing. But once they accept it, it's liberating. So the next number in order is a 2. They're typically classified as the helper. I always say that when people take a test, they'll go online, they'll take an Enneagram test, and they tend to answer the questions in a way that will have them either be a 2 or a 9, because those are the really nice people on the Enneagram. Those are the people everybody wants to hang out with and be friends with, because they're the easiest people to get along with. 7s can kind of fall into that too, but 2s are the helper. So if you have a 2 that's a host, know that they're trying to create a space where that everybody feels welcome, because it's really important to them that everybody has a space, and they're all, they can thrive off being needed, and that can definitely go in an unhealthy direction. But when they're trying to do things for you, like when they want to fix your plate for you, or they want to pick up, that's not the same as like our 5 love languages, but that's their way, right? That's the way they are getting meaning in the world. That's the way they're connecting to you, is to help you, to lavish love on you. So, for me, if you're a 2 that's a host, and I'm not a 2, so it's hard for me to directly say, but like my friends that are 2s, like, what I would, if I could gift them anything as a host, is like to realize that we're here just because you're you, and not because of all the things you do for us. Like we're showing up to Thanksgiving just to be with you. You don't have to do anything for us. You don't have to fix our plate. If everything falls apart, we just want to be with you, you know? If you have a 2 that shows up, they're coming to Thanksgiving. That's probably the person that's in the kitchen doing the dishes with you. That immediately when they walk in, the first thing they say is, okay, so what can I do to help? They're putting ice in the glasses. They're getting everybody ready. They're going and making sure all the, if there's a baby that's crying, they're going to go and they're going to pick up the baby and take care of the baby. They're the ones that are looking for opportunities to help. And when we have those opportunities, I think it's good to let them do it, but also to reaffirm for them, you don't have to do that for me to just want to be with you. You don't have to, because oftentimes in our families, I think 2s end up being, I don't want to say taken advantage of. That doesn't feel like the right thing to say, but I don't know. It's just assumed they're going to help. It's assumed they're going to be the ones that make everything kind of come together. I don't know. It's just assumed. If a 2 does mess up, if they bring a wrong dish or they show up late, don't harp on them, because they're already worried you're not going to love them because they messed up inside. So just be like, no big deal. Let's move on. And that's your opportunity to try and gift them with grace. Your 3s, which is a number I kind of wanted to be when I was first learning about the Enneagram. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to want to be a number. So dang it, 3s are, your overachievers, your success people. They're talented, they're networkers, they're put together. They can often come across like they've got it all together, but that doesn't necessarily mean they interiorly feel like they have it all together. These are often the people that are going to be telling you the big stories over your Thanksgiving meal, right? A 7 might tell you a big story because they had a big adventure, but a 3 is going to tell you a story because they're reassuring themselves that they've accomplished something, getting something done, being efficient, connecting relationships. It can come across, if you're hosting a 3, it can come across like, I think sometimes they feel inauthentic, but it's not the case at all. It's just that they are able to do they're so competent and able to accomplish so much more than most of the numbers. I think it feels like they're just like kind of doing. And so it doesn't feel like it has a lot of depth, but that's not true at all. They're just gifted at being able to accomplish stuff. They're competitive. If you play games with your family, have a 3 on your team, don't oppose a 3 or an 8. Just have a team full of 3s and 8s. If you are a host that's a 3, maybe what it would look like for you to remind yourself that hosting Thanksgiving dinner isn't a thing to be done. It isn't a moment to be accomplished or pulled together or to achieve. It is a moment to be. And even if things don't go well, just being present with your family was accomplishment enough. Which I pause because I feel like 3s are like, well, no, but we either need to have made some headway or some progress or have accomplished something. It's like, yes, but you can just be.
This was the best Thanksgiving dinner that anyone has ever seen.
Yes,
that I have hosted. Yes.
Yeah. And you can just, what would that look like to like not hear any of that? Jordan, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no. Well, this is so relevant for me, like 1 to the 3, because that's what I am. I am a 3, and so
okay. Okay, would have not been a good heads up. I can be nicer about them.
Well, it's like, you talk about the imposter, like our imposter is typically so big because we, try to present better than we actually are. And that creates a gap, for us that internally we always feel less than how the world actually sees us. And the being thing that you're talking about, it is like all those moments feel like a thing to get done. Like, it's just like, man, we've accomplished it. Like we've succeeded in the holidays. Or I've had pretty extensive conversations with my wife because my brother is about to get married. And I keep like, looking forward to that day is like, oh, the, best man speech needs to be good, or like, whatever it might be, as opposed to like, ideally this is a once in a lifetime thing for him. And so like, this is a moment where I just like want to be like so desperately, present and with and supportive and enjoy. And instead there's like so many things that work against the 3 being present. But I also like to all the first three ones that you've said so far, like just how freeing that would be to know those things about people that are important in our life. Like that the one is not criticizing, but the one just can't help but make things better.
Yeah.
And if like you see a one that way,
Yeah.
ones are fantastic friends to have because everything is going to get better,
Yes.
or that a two doesn't think you did a bad job as a host. A two, like that's how they show and receive love, is just to help. So it doesn't mean like you were deficient, but it's so freeing as you start to realize like the way that these people are showing up. So I love what you're saying so far. It's such an amazing lens as you go through.
No, I love you sharing that, because I'm thinking about like just, so if you show up like to the wedding and you show up to Thanksgiving, what would be extending a gift to someone maybe with your lens would be like, it's not about what you're wearing or how you performed at the speech. It's just, we're glad that you're here. What's hard about that though is being in your number. Like I say that, but I also like, so when I show up as myself, like I can't help but want to fix for various reasons in lots of different ways. So when you tell me like, no, Jen, just be, I'm like, oh, like I feel it in my soul to be like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't, like there's something. And so I think, recognize that people are going to kind of fight that a little bit. And we're all essentially just trying to figure out, I think in general, we all just really do really want to be good people. And whether you attach that to faith or not, for me, it's like, I really do want to love God well, and I want that love to pour out onto others. It's really the core of what I'm going for. I just sometimes get in my own way. And so if I can remember that you as a 3 or so-and-so as an 8, or, whatever your number may be is doing that, that will get us a lot further down the road at our weddings and our Thanksgiving meal.
And the being is just so scary. That's why it's so interesting for me, like that there are some kind of aspirational numbers, if you will, that some people are like, oh, I want to be these numbers. Because what you start to learn is these are all just ways that we hide our true selves. So if I'm performing well as a 3, then I don't have to just be with you and you see who I really am. And I'm scared if you saw that, that, or if I help, then I'm adding value to you. And we don't have to focus on who I am as a 2, or, whatever that might be. And so, so it's so wild. That's why the being concept is scary. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. It feels like, but and also the reason that we get these numbers, is because the world has somehow rewarded us for operating this way. I bet you I was still in Nashville Sunday, but I'm imagining Sunday after an amazing sermon, everybody came up and said, Jordan, I mean, that happens, right? Which is what you need to hear. You need that affirmation, but the world has rewarded us. Like for me, like, so when I do pastoral counseling and someone's like, oh my gosh, you've changed my marriage. I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. So I feel like I have to keep doing that for everybody, and so, the world rewards you to work this way, and God uses it. So I have no doubt that someone from what you shared Sunday was impacted. It makes a difference in their family, just even this week at Thanksgiving. So God is at work, even in our own, like he works through us and spite us. And so he's like, I made you. I knew your number from day one. You had to figure it out and let the world kind of do its thing with you. And I'm ready to use that for some awesome stuff. So I don't want anybody to hear like, hey, your numbers are all kind of, all these crazy characteristics are jacked up. Like, well, yeah, but God can use that. And he's excited to use it, So speaking of, so I will say the next number 4 might be the person in your family that always feels a little weird. They are creative. They are the trendsetters, the people who can they show up and most of the time, not all the time, right? But they love aesthetics and beauty and nature. I think they're really driven toward nature, creativity. So if you've got that cousin that always comes in wearing that weird thing that no one's wearing, one, they're probably all going to be wearing it in 4 years. Just know that, because they're trendsetters. But 2, that's not them trying to get attention. That might be them being them, where they all they need is, so the good side of that creative element and that trend-setting element, the bad side of that, right, is that sometimes that's covering over this deep desire of feeling unseen or ignored. So they have to push toward this uniqueness. Like, have you ever met someone that's like, they've just got to be different? And I think some people are wired to, they've got to be different. They feel that push in them. So they need to feel pressure. It can be really difficult to, it's almost like a never-ending hunger that they have to be unique and to be special. So if you're trying to love a 4, they show up. it can almost feel bottomless. Like it's very difficult sometimes, I think, to reach fours because one, they can tend to be a little more of a melancholy personality when you think of like some of the great artists of the world, but they struggled with some of the darkness. They really can kind of wrestle in that area, and they feel like they will never be enough because they can't be unique enough. And so just honoring the fact that they're creative, not judging them for those differences, but also not feeding the monster of, oh, you're so unique and trendy. Like, how can we can do this dance
balance
with them of like, that like, hey, you know, that's a great outfit that people will be wearing in 3 years that no one understands right now. But, you know, I love you if you don't have that outfit. And I know we're not going to say those things specifically. Although if you do, that would be humorous. I would love to hear how that turns out. Hey, I think you're a 4, so I love your uniqueness, but you don't need it. I love you. Don't do that. Looking at if I'm a 4 as a host, I'm probably going to have kind of a different kind of feel. You know, like Thanksgiving, I might try and do Thanksgiving a different way.
Yeah.
And so you might step into that house and be like, I just would like some turkey and dressing. And they're doing like the trendy thing. So kind of working our way around. I feel like I'm trying to fly through these. I'm sorry. 5.
This is great.
And 5s are observant. They love facts. They love information. They feel safe with data. Like if I can know it, then I am comfortable and I'm safe. They're often experts in things, right? They typically, in my experience, are the quieter of all the numbers. 9s can be quiet too, but for different reasons than 5s. They're very much in their head. They're very private, very they like to compartmentalize. They like to put things in boxes, like all the things. And because boxes mean I'm safe and I can control it. And when they do engage you, when they do want to have you should be honored, because 5s don't expend that energy willy-nilly. If they're talking to you, they're serious and they're excited that they are, you know, because they're letting everything that's in here, because it lives here, and it's having an opportunity to come out, because they typically are not going to be your most social. You may feel like they're sitting at Thanksgiving watching when can I get out? Yeah. Then it's not, but don't take that as rude. They just want to get out. Like that's not personal. They just don't want to be there because that requires a lot of energy. And again, a reminder, if we're in a season that's requiring a lot of energy with all the stuff we're experiencing right now in life, they're going to have even less energy. You know, so you want to encourage them to engage, but don't force it. You know, one of the things that, at least in my experience with 5, they don't like surprises. So if you're a host that's like, in the middle of Thanksgiving, I'm going to surprise everyone and we're going to go do this thing or this activity. And then you have that one family member that's like, this was not in my plan. And
couldn't prepare for it.
I mean, so I'm really close with one particular 5, and I like to surprise people, and I have had to learn, like, not him. No surprises.
Yeah, this was fun for me. I've been into the Enneagram long enough now that I have a friend, you know, in each number. So as you're going through these, I can so perfectly picture somebody that's coming to mind as you're bringing it up. It's fantastic. Yes. It's so entertaining. But
we should have done like a Friendsgiving and have 9 people on the call. Like we're like how do each of you feel about Thanksgiving?
So do you think a 5 would ever even be the host? I don't know if 5 would ever be the host for Thanksgiving.
I don't think that's a great question. You know, that's actually something to keep in the back of our minds when we're thinking of going to someone's home. Like, because what if you're a 5 and you marry someone and they bring their family to Thanksgiving, but you're the 5 and you're like, oh, now I got to entertain them and host them. But I do actually agree. It's funny because I'm looking at just some of my thoughts on the 5, and I didn't even mention they would host.
They'd be like, get out of my house.
Why are you all here? You invited us. It's Thanksgiving. So going on to the 6, 6s are fun for me. They're loyal, they're vigilant. I have one friend that's a 6. They always position their body in a way. This is just his experience. So it's not all 6s, but in a way that they can observe as much as possible. So like if you're going to a restaurant and like I will sit and face a wall, that's probably healthy for me so I'm not distracted. They want to survey everything. They're always on guard. They are the guard dogs of the Enneagram, right? They are always a little skeptical of systems and structures, maybe even people. That can come across as like rigid or critical, but really it's just they're guarded. They're like, these are the people you want to go into battle with, because they're going to perceive the danger before you ever even knew, because they live to perceive the danger. They're always assessing the situation. They're always thinking through the scenario. And that it comes across rigid sometimes. I know that for a lot of people, a 6 seems either anxious and afraid or aggressive and blunt. But all of that comes under this package of, I don't know that I trust the world, so I have to prepare myself for the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of fun because actually Julie and I are both married to 6s. So yeah.
You
That's
need
so
okay,
funny.
we should have gone over that. Sorry.
I know. Although my husband recently read through it, and he thinks he might actually be a 7 instead, which might be correct. So we're either like 6 with a 7 wing or a 7 with a 6 wing. We're not really sure. So
yeah.
I love that Chris is like, I'm going to change this my number midstream. I'm just
yeah.
I mean, one of my very best friends is a 6, and she just lives in this hyper vigilant state. And in some moments it does come out as anxiety. Like, and for some 6s, it's literal anxiety. It's not anything that, they're not trying to be wimpy or anything. They're really like nervous in the world. And there's a million reasons I think they end up in landing in those places. But for the most part, there's just this constant guardedness because they're prepared for whatever is going to come their way.
We're such like a funny balance with each other, because like as a 3, it's almost like my imagination works to all the way things might go right, usually almost like unrealistically, because I'm like trying to achieve, trying to what if, and then she has an imagination that goes all the way things could go wrong, so we're just our imaginations are both very active, but they're like going in complete opposite directions, and so it's like such a fun balance.
Good to know that?
Absolutely.
To me, that like immediately I'm thinking that's got to solve so many fights. Because if she can look at you and go, okay, there's Jordan, not really counting the cost, not really thinking it through. He's just going. He's got to go get it done and achieve it, right? And then her, she's like, oh, she is thinking about it.
Or to know how I can stress her. I mean, I could talk for hours. I don't need to sidetrack on our specific marriage, but it's just that there's so many things like that. Because a 3 would want to be risk taking and try new things, and she sees that as unstable. You know what I mean? She's like, that goes against my security, and so before I thought it'd be like her like disrespecting me, and now I'm just realizing like I'm going against everything that is her center of gravity. When I do this and change course 6 times in the day, and so it's just there's so many things like that, but.
I've had my friend that's a 6. She is married to a 3 as well, but she has come to me. She's been like, when is he going to grow up?
Yeah.
And he's always dreaming. He's always ready for the next thing. He's going on to the next project. And she's just like, when is it enough? And it's like, it's never enough. But it's not because he's trying to do that to you. Yeah. And I do think that in general, like with all this stuff, whether it's family systems or just the holidays, like if we could take things less personally and we could realize that people are just doing their own thing too. We've kind of coined the whole you do you. It's like, well, but they can't help but do them. And they don't even realize they're doing them, So like, I think realizing like, she's not doing that to you. If a 6 shows up and they seem like uneasy or distrusting, it's not at you, it's just them being them. I think that's great. I love that. I love how it works out in a marriage. It works everywhere. Just like,
Sure.
Looking at a 7, which Chris might be. So let's see. I've only met Chris a couple of times, so I'm going to try and be. So they're adventurous, fun, playful, impulsive, love travel, nature, naturally, like childlike. They end up, I think some people kind of think of them as immature at times, but they're just natural children, which, and what comes with that is, the innocence as well as the playfulness, but also, they're going to avoid uncomfortable situations, because why would I do that? Why would I put myself in an uncomfortable situation? Whereas certain numbers, like maybe an 8, or I know for me as a 1, sometimes I'm like, the more uncomfortable, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm doing something right. Like that, it has to be difficult. It can't be easy. But for a 7, it's like, why would you do that to yourself? They don't, they are, I think they're usually the funnier of the numbers. Don't tell Chris that, Julie, don't let him listen to this. It'll go right to his head. But also in that humor, it can mask things and become like passive aggressive, right? And it can come out sideways when they're stressed, especially because stress annoys them because it's getting in their way of a full and vibrant life. And it's like, hello, stress, you're in my way. So I think they can be a little overindulgent at times. They can come across flighty, but they just want to get the most out of life. And so they have this thirst and this hunger to get the most, and they don't understand why everybody wouldn't be on that journey with them. So for them, hosting, what would hosting Thanksgiving be like for a 7? How would Chris host?
A party.
It's gonna be like a party.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna be this like we sit down and it's not gonna be rigid and
games,
maybe even
fun.
Yeah, all your friends.
Yeah. All the people, and the more people the merrier. Whereas some, like a 5 is going to be terrified by that. Like, why are all these people here? And a 7 is like, because they wanted to be. You're
it's
just like,
fun.
okay, it's fun. So, and I do think that's actually a point where you can give 7s rest too, right? Where you can say, hey, you don't have to be the life of the party to be valued. I love you even if we're not laughing. I love you even if we're not playing.
Yeah, that's great.
Kind of like if you think of them and their childlike. The way they're wired to be like that, like think of the times that you just like hold your little ones and you're just like, just be still and just let me hold you for a second, kind of thing. So I think that if you can offer that space to a 7 to be like emotionally and energy wise, just be still. That could be a cool, awkward moment too. So video that if you do that with Chris for us.
Just
Chris,
it's okay.
We're not going to do anything fun. Just be still. Watch his fingers start to twitch. Like, yeah. The other number that I said, I kind of want to be a 3, but man, I would love to be an 8. Now, depending upon how you learn about the Enneagram, people will also tell you the number that everyone hates is the 8. I don't think that's fair, but I understand where it comes from because they can be so strong, and they're challengers. They're very powerful. I was actually just talking to an 8 the other day. And we always laugh at how she doesn't understand people not being blunt. And I was like trying to explain to her that there's like a difference in like blunt force trauma and being honest.
Yeah.
Like when your truth is beating someone over the head, it is not truth, it is a weapon. Like just, they're a force of nature. They mean what they say, and I would like to think we all do that, but they really do it. If they have a mask, like Jordan was talking about, the 3s can have a mask of their performance as a shield or a mask. 8 has fists as a mask. Like they're going to fight the world. There's always something to protect, always something to fight. And when they're at rest, that can be actually a calming thing because you get to gravitate toward their passion and their strengths. But when they are fighting, they can come across confrontational. They can seem aggressive, but I've never met an 8 that's aggressive other than just like their passionate for life is aggressive. Not typically seen as warm. They speak their mind and are confused why others might not. They come to life in the battle. So talking about politics, if you have an 8 and you start bringing up a political conversation, you're going to get what they think. And they're going to enjoy sharing with you what they think, but they're also okay with you not agreeing. And I think that we don't create enough of that in our culture where like we can, the scripture is as iron sharpens iron. And that means sparks are going to fly. So I love the idea. It's not, not feather sharpens feather. It's like the 8s exist in the world to sharpen us, to help us refine our passions and our ideas. And if we can, they're not fake. They're going to give you exactly what they mean. And so there's a lot of value in that. There's a lot to be gained from someone who sees the world so black and white and bold. And I love, you can learn a lot from them. But if they're hosting, I've experienced there's not a lot that bothers them. So if you're late, that's on you. Like, they're going to look at you and they're going to be like, why were you late? And you're going to give some excuse. And they're going to be like, that's an excuse. Go sit down. And they're going to be fine.
So
if you're a 2 and you're late to an 8's house and they're like, you're late, and you're just going to cry because they're going to disappoint you. They're not disappointed. They're just stating the obvious. You're late. It was the end of the story. So if an 8 shows up, just let them do their thing. And I do think sometimes you can remind them that the world doesn't always see things as they do, because I think that confuses them sometimes.
What's interesting to
9.
me is like, listen, talking about 8s, we work with an 8 on staff here, and I'm a 9, which you're going to get to in a second. And so one of the things that I had to learn when like working with them was that if we get into like a really healthy discussion about something, like I come out of it going like, are we okay? Like, do we need to talk through this? And they're just like moved on to the next thing because they actually respect that I stood up and I said what I thought, even if I disagreed with them. Like,
oh yeah. And they do. If you can stand up to them, not against them, but you can say your opinion, they can absolutely disagree with you, and they will respect the fact that you stood alongside them. You know, having that, I love that. That's a great point. Like, because I do think 8, if you have an 8 in your family, it can be intimidating. And so it can feel like you have to back down. And it's not about confronting or not. It's just about, they're looking to respect you. They want to know that they can respect you, and they don't, they are so strong. They don't necessarily even understand weakness in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like they're, you know, so if you just take your stand. I remember talking to an 8, and she was dealing with a situation where she had expressed to someone how she felt, but that person didn't believe it. Like she said, oh no, I'm okay. But the other woman was like, well, but are you really? Are you really? Are you really? Are you really? And she was, but watching her mind go, I really was okay.
Still asking?
And I remember saying to her, I said, well, that's because not everybody says what they mean. And she's like, what?
Why don't they do that?
No, but when you say, well, here's what I think, they're totally cool with it. Yeah, I love that. That's a good. Okay, I'm not going to try and guess who on the North Point staff is an 8. We'll leave that alone.
Leave that alone.
I'm sure that's fun. I would love to work alongside her for an 8 because that strength and that presence, but I would also probably cry after meetings. So 9s. 9s are, I mean, I married a 9. So, and he does such a good job at balancing me out. So they're the peacemaker. I would say, again, I said 9s and 2s are the numbers everybody wants to be. It's because 9s are so agreeable, and they can be neutral and just easy to get along with. If you've got an 8 at your Thanksgiving meal, sit a 9 next to them. It will calm them.
It might calm the 8, but it might freak out the 9, depending on how healthy they are.
The 9's going to be exhausted by the time dinner is done. But they're very conflict averse. They're not necessarily seeking conflict. But whereas, and there's so much you can get into the Enneagram with the triads and the way the numbers relate to each other. But so if the 8 is that strong, 1, 8, and 9 go together, and they're a part of the gut center, and that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, you can see how those work together, how that 8 and that 9 could calm each other because they're kind of opposites, but they could also do what you said, like exhaust. So 9s, they don't want to rock the boat. They're not going to be the person that causes a lot of problems at your meal. They'll host if you ask them to, but they probably would have never thought enough about themselves to offer to host, because they don't necessarily always feel seen, but not in the same way a 4 needs to be seen. A 9 is very comfortable not being in the spotlight. They don't mind doing whatever's kind of needed. I think the thing I've learned the most with 9s is if I want to engage them, I ask them specific questions to pull them out. Otherwise, they'll just sit back and soak it all in very, very kindly. They have a great energy. They calm the whole room. But if you're, a gift to them would be like, I want to know your opinion. And then you actually take the time to listen.
Yes, for sure.
Because they do have I remember asking my husband one time, I was like, well, do you have opinions? And he's like, I have lots of opinions. I just don't always feel the need like you to talk to them about everybody, talk about them all the time to everybody. And so I've learned just, asking intentional questions. I think that someone told me once that they took a test. I don't know which test. There's a million tests online. And they said that they got a 9, and that's the crown of the Enneagram.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, like the tip top, like the king of the Enneagram. And they were like, yes. And they said it's because they are all of the numbers in one. And I went home and I was like, I want to learn more about this. So I started to look around, and I found the site that talked about it that way. But I think what they were picking up on is that the 9 adapts to all the numbers. Yes. So not that it's not a jewel. It's a wonderful crown. I love the 9. But it's more that they don't know which number they are. So they pick up pieces of all of them.
Yes. And we really want to to keep the peace, and we just merge with whatever. If everybody's going this way, sure, we'll go this way, and that feels great. And if everybody's going this way, we'll just go this way, and it feels nice to just be at peace with everyone. It's great.
Yes, which is a beautiful thing until like maybe like we really want you to just be you and you to shine with your opinion and you to take charge in some way, you know.
Our eights listening are like, I do not understand. I don't get you.
I know.
Like, what?
Why are we merging? Why would we
Showing
merge?
up a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah.
We could spend forever kind of dancing all around this, but that was not short at all. But if I had to think about the Thanksgiving table, that's how we might show up.
Yeah. Well,
I love that.
I think, that is so incredibly helpful to understand. 'Cause people might have been able to bounce around or skip to their number, skip to their spouse's number, or whatever it is too, you know, but I love the concept of knowing how you show up. This feels like the big, like takeaway, like knowing how you show up, what it is that you're bringing to the table, discovering your wiring. I mean, that's part of the doing the verse 18, like as far as it depends on you. So to know your core fears, desires, needs, etc., I think is one of the ways that you can take ownership, and then to know how others show up, and I think certainly like at a minimum, if you're married or if you're dating your spouse, your significant other, perhaps your children, perhaps your parents, I mean, those core relationships, like certainly, but the broader that network can get, that you can seek to understand how others are showing up, it's an absolute game changer.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Love
is
it.
there this is putting you a little bit on the spot, just maybe a closing question. Is there anything, if people are like, they are interested, they've listened this far in, they're still with us, and they want to learn more, they want to dive into who their spouse is or whoever it might be, any like resources that you say, would you point them to a book, point them to a site? Is there anything that comes to mind where somebody could learn more?
Yeah, that is on the spot. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have a go-to book that I recommend as a first read. Although I don't actually, I really encourage people not to do what I did, which is immediately get online and take a test so you can figure out your number and figure out how to make your number better. Don't do that. Actually take the time to learn all the numbers and try not to figure out your number. A friend of mine teaches an Enneagram class here in Nashville, and I was telling him, I was like, what would it look like to not give the test till the end? That you actually spend weeks just sitting and soaking up every perspective, and then you kind of start to dive into that. So put the work into it. So if you're like, oh, I'm curious about this, if it's like, I just got to go online and take a test, then just go grab one. There's some decent ones and not decent ones, just like all tools out there. But I would more encourage people to be willing to do the work in it, because for me, it's God's way of, he's helped me see more of my sin. And I know we don't like that word, but I miss the mark all the time. And learning why I do has been really beneficial. So if you have to read a book, I love A Christian Perspective on the Enneagram by Richard Rohr. That's my go-to first book. I have read The Road Back to You and The Sacred Enneagram and several others, but that's I love it. It's a healthy biblical vantage point of a tool that can be used in about a million different ways. But I love he keeps it grounded in scripture and just in our faith. Outside that, one of my favorite podcasts on the Enneagram is Sleeping at Last. And he did a series on, and I can send you these if you post them wherever people look. But
yeah, we can post a link for sure to all of these.
He wrote a song for each Enneagram number. And he's kind of a folky artist. So if you don't like that, that's cool. But I mean, that was my moment that I had with my number, where I was like, okay, I'm trying to not be this, but this makes so much sense to me. And when I had that moment in my car with a song, I was like, so I totally always tell people, I'm like, read that book, listen to that series, and then just be in it for the long haul.
That's awesome.
It's a process.
Awesome. Yeah, it is. And there's just so much to it. So it's so cool to get into.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time, for real. Thank you for this investment. It's so helpful, like so practical, seriously.
I hope so.
And no, it really was. It was so great. And for those of you still tuning in with us here, if you are listening to this, Thanksgiving time frame, then this Sunday we're going to be in part 2 of Navigating the Season. If you're listening to this later on, then Navigating Season Part 2 will already be out. So make sure just check out both of those, and we will see you next time for the podcast.